The King James Version, also known as the Authorized Version, a King James Bible, is an English translation of the Christian Bible for the Church of England, begun in 1604 and completed in 1611. The books of the King James Version include the 39 books of the Old Testament, an intertestamental section containing 14 apocrypha books, and the 27 books of the New Testament. It was first printed by the King's printer Robert Barker and was the third translation into English to be approved by the English Church authorities. The first had been the Great Bible, commissioned in the reign of King Henry VIII, and the second had been the Bishop's Bible of 1568. In January 1604, James I convened the Hampton Court Conference, where a new English version was conceived in response to the problems of the earlier translations perceived by the Puritans, a faction of the Church of England. The translation is widely considered to be both beautiful and scholarly, and thus a towering achievement in English literature. James gave the translators instructions intended to ensure that the new version would conform to the ecclesiology and reflect the episcopal structure of the Church of England and its belief in an ordained clergy. The translation was done by 47 scholars, all of whom were members of the Church of England. In common with most other translations of the period, the New Testament was translated from Greek, the Old Testament from Hebrew and Aramaic, and the Apocrypha from Greek and Latin. In the Book of Common Prayer, the text of the Authorized Version replaced the text of the Great Bible for epistle and gospel readings, and as such was authorized by Act of Parliament. By the first half of the 18th century, the Authorized Version had become effectively unchallenged as the English translation used in Anglican and English Protestant churches, except for the Psalms and some short passages in the Book of Common Prayer of the Church of England. Over the course of the 18th century, the Authorized Version supplanted the Latin Vulgate as the standard version of Scripture for English-speaking scholars. With the development of stereotype printing at the beginning of the 19th century, this version of the Bible became the most widely printed book in history. Almost all such printings presenting the standard text of 1769 extensively re-edited by Benjamin Blayney at Oxford, and nearly always omitting the books of the Apocrypha. Today the unqualified title, King James Version, usually indicates that this Oxford Standard text is meant. Name. The title of the first edition of the translation was The Holy Bible, containing the Old Testament and the New, newly translated out of the original tongues, and amped with the former translations, diligently compared and revised by His Majesty's special commandment. The title page carries the words "appointed to be read in churches," and F. Bruce suggests it was probably authorized by order in council, but no record of the authorization survives because the Privy Council registers from 1600 to 1613 were destroyed by fire in January 1618. For many years it was common not to give the translation any specific name. In his Leviathan of 1651, Thomas Hobbes referred to it as the English translation made in the beginning of the reign of King James. A 1761 brief account of the various translations of the Bible into English refers to the 1611 version merely as a new, complete, and more accurate translation, despite referring to the Great Bible by that name, and despite using the name Rhemish Testament for the Douay-Rheims Bible version. Similarly, A History of England, whose 5th edition was published in 1775, writes merely that new translation of the Bible, viz., that now in use, was begun in 1607, and published in 1611. King James's Bible is used as the name for the 1611 translation in Charles Butler's Hare Biblici. Other works from the early 19th century confirm the widespread use of this name on both sides of the Atlantic. It is found both in a historical sketch of the English translations of the Bible, published in Massachusetts in 1815, and in an English publication from 1818, which explicitly states that the 1611 version is generally known by the name of King James's Bible. This name was also found as King James Bible, for example in a book review from 1811. The phrase King James's Bible is used as far back as 1715, although in this case it is not clear whether this is a name or merely a description. The use of Authorized version or Authorized version, capitalized and used as a name, is found as early as 1814. For some time before this, descriptive phrases such as "our present" and "only publicly authorized version," "our authorized version," and "the authorized version" are found. The Oxford English Dictionary records a usage in 1824. In Britain, the 1611 translation is generally known as the Authorized version. Today, as early as 1814, we find King James Version evidently a descriptive phrase being used. The King James Version is found unequivocally used as a name in a letter from 1855. The next year, King James Bible, with no possessor, appears as a name in a Scottish source. In the United States, the 1611 translation is generally known as the King James Version today.